They need to have a scapegoat.
Attorney Brian Hirschman says Multicare's Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup and health officials are looking to pin the blame of a hepatitis C scare on his client.
What they know is they're facing civil litigation and they've got to find a scapegoat. What better person than a person who's got some narcotics issues, right?
Good morning.
Earlier this morning, Puyallup police say they helped Canadian and American law enforcement arrest the nurse at the border Thursday night and said time was running out.
I think that without her travel plans, we would have liked to have developed some more evidence, but again, we're working under a time crunch with her leaving the country.
And while health officials say the two original patients who tested positive for hepatitis C are linked by the virus's DNA, they can't yet say the same for the nurse.
Is it ever possible, do you think, to determine whether or not this nurse spread this particular strain or whether or not she contracted it from these two patients?
That's a good question. I think that's something that we would be asking in the investigation. Again, keeping our eyes open for all possibilities.
Multicare believes the nurse was stealing drugs, but does not know how the virus was spread to two patients. On Monday, the hospital sent letters to more than 2,500 patients who may have had contact with the nurse inside the emergency room and urged them to get tested.
I got a call yesterday, and they were able to tell me right away after verifying my information that I was negative for all three tests.
Erin Sadeloff was one of them, but she still has a lot more questions about how the virus spread.
They don't understand the mechanism by which this transpired, and there's just no way unless they caught it on camera or they had, or she admitted to it.
Meanwhile, the nurse's attorney insists she's being blamed for something she couldn't have done, even if she may have abused drugs.
In the Pierce County Jail is a young lady in a suicide smock who is an outstanding nurse, who's a committed professional, who is experiencing psychological trauma because of the commitment she has to her job, saving people's lives.
The nurse accused of infecting patients with hepatitis C is fighting back, saying she didn't do it. Cora Weberg is speaking out for the first time. 1 week ago, Good Samaritan Hospital said Weberg may have exposed as many as 2,600 patients in the emergency room. Good Sam claims Weberg has hep C and used hospital drugs on herself and then patients. She denies it.
These allegations, which led to my arrest on Thursday evening, have led to the darkest days of my life.
Weberg's attorney says his client does admit using drugs that had been thrown away on herself in 3 failed suicide attempts because of the stress of the job. Her license has been suspended, but no criminal charges have been filed.
All right, Walter, we'll check in with you shortly. The nurse at the center of a hepatitis C scare in Pierce County, she is fighting back against allegations she infected 2 patients and then put thousands more people at risk.
Yeah, so Cora Weberg says she's been cooperating fully with investigators, and her attorneys claim she could never have been the source of hepatitis C that infected 2 multi-care patients and prompted thousands more to be tested. But she does admit to taking discarded drugs, and as Q13's Steve Kiggins reports, she planned to use them to take her own life.
Weberg's attorneys told us that she was distraught over her job, saying that the demands of dealing with sick and dying patients forced her to consider committing suicide, not just once, but several times. She also insists she never used herself and her patients, and she denies ever having hepatitis C that could ever be contracted.
As of this very moment, I do not believe that I am a contagious carrier of hepatitis C.
Cora Weberg, the former multi-care nurse alleged to have stolen drugs from Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup, is for the first time telling her side of the story.
These allegations, which led to my arrest on Thursday evening, have led to the darkest days of my life.
Puyallup police arrested Weberg last Friday at the Canadian border, but she was soon released from jail. The prosecutor is yet to charge her with a crime, but could still, depending on what investigators discover. However, her attorneys believe police and public health officials are looking for a scapegoat.
Are these investigators? Was the law enforcement? Was Department of Health? Was Tacoma Pierce County Health Department? Are they incompetent or are they dishonest? I think those are the 2 options.
Public health officials say the 2 initial patients under Weberg's care tested positive for DNA-linked strains of hepatitis C. The State Nursing Commission suspended Weberg's license, claiming she failed to disclose she was a carrier for the disease. But Weberg and her attorneys claim she never had hep C, saying she passed an initial blood test when the investigation began, and a second test later proved to be inconclusive.
Apparently, there is a very low level of a pathogen in my blood that can constitute hepatitis C. but not at the low levels that are found in my blood.
The investigation began in the summer of 2017. Multicare says they believe Weberg stole drugs, but doesn't know how the two patients contracted the disease. Weberg claims she only took drugs that had been discarded and that she never used needles that had once been used by herself or patients. Weberg's attorneys also claim investigators ignored her written answers to questions posed by health officials and instead claim she in fact did have the virus and potentially exposed patients who had visited Good Sam's ER for more than 6 months. Her attorneys also say that's impossible because Weberg was a regular donor of blood.
We simply called the Red Cross. Did she donate blood? Was it clean? The answer's in the affirmative. Why didn't they do that instead of just engaging in rank conjecture?
In Pierce County, Steve Kiggins, Q13 News.
So now we've got two different sides to this story. Puyallup police responded to today's press conference. They say they will continue their investigation wherever those facts lead. Good Samaritan also says they are remaining focused on the 1,000 people who have already taken advantage of free testing since all of this broke.
The accused ER nurse in the hepatitis infection case at Good Samaritan Hospital broke her silence at a press conference today. 31-year-old Cora Weberg admits to stealing injectable drugs but denies ever injecting anyone with a needle she used on herself. King 5's Alyssa Hahn joins us live now in studio with the nurse's side of the story. Alyssa.
Mark, Cora Weberg read from a prepared statement during a press conference that lasted almost an hour. Her attorneys laid out the case for her innocence and said Good Samaritan Hospital was using her as a scapegoat.
A quiet but emotional Cora Weberg entered the room, stripped of her nursing license, her passport, her driver's license, and credit cards, all because of allegations she intentionally infected patients with hepatitis C at Good Samaritan Hospital.
I want them to know, I want everyone to know that I never intentionally nor unintentionally stuck anyone with a needle with which I had previously stuck myself.
But we are taking action as if she is the common denominator. And
last week, hospital officials announced 2 patients had been infected with the disease and that Weberg was the link. As a result, they sent out a letter asking 2,600 patients treated by the nurse during her 8 months of employment to get tested as well.
Are they incompetent or are they dishonest? I think those are the 2 options.
Her criminal defense attorney, Brian Hirschman, took issue with what police, hospital officials, and the Nursing Commission have claimed. He says his client took 2 blood tests for investigators. The first tested negative. The second found a low level of antibodies.
What they didn't say was, at levels so low, it's questionable whether she has hep C at all. And certainly she's not contagious. Conspicuously, that was left out.
Yet while she was a nurse in the ER, Weberg admits taking the injectable medications from a discard barrel, storing them in a syringe, and took them home. Not for an opiate addiction, but because stress from her job and a miscarriage left her wanting to take her own life.
And she did, in fact, take drugs that had already been discarded by her and perhaps other nurses and combine them into a vial so that she could kill herself, because the depths of her depression were so great as a result of pressures related to this job.
Depression resulting in 3 unsuccessful suicide attempts, but Weberg denies she ever jeopardized patients in the process.
And it's beyond my comprehension how I would have even unintentionally exposed someone to hepatitis C.
We spoke with an attorney who filed suit for 1 patient who tested positive last week. She now represents 5 patients who have tested positive for hep C. She said no matter if Cora Weberg is guilty or not, she says one definite common denominator in all of these cases is Good Samaritan Hospital. Back to you.